whatever you did worked.
Okay, can you guys hear us? Let me just type that in.
You're on. Check it out.
I know we're on, but can they hear us?
I think we're good to go.
No,
We are live.
Okay.
Hey. All right. Technology is a wonderful thing. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the REVan Live with Brian Wolfe. We try to do this every time we head up to Detroit. We're here this weekend for the NMRA, NMCA, Arrington Performance Nationals, I think it's called, at Martin, Michigan. So we'll be there this weekend. But before we do that, we always stop by Brian's house. We got some dyno stuff covered today. We did a lot with the 7.3. We made some big headway with the engine for the Cyclone. Ford has given us a really cool Maverick, which my friend Jill, who sells new Fords now, we'll talk about that in a little bit, tells me is a rare vehicle to be able to get a hold of right now. It's a XLT hybrid, so look for a review on the channel for that. The fine folks at Camshaft, right there, have offered up a nice $100 gift certificate that we'll give away a little bit later in the night. We'll let you know how that's going to go down. Probably do some kind of trivia question or something like that. But Brian.
Yes.
Since the last time we've been up here, a lot of improvements. You've run your race car. We did a video on that in the channel.
Yes.
And you've been making a lot of dyno pulls.
Well, we just started making some dyno pulls. We did send the absorber out to Dyno Help just because it needed to be serviced. So they rebuilt the absorber. We just got it running back up today where we did our first runs with it. So everything's looking good. Oli from LBR was here, helped me do the calibration. So everything's lined up and it's looking good. But obviously with the weather we got in, the low barometers, the really kind of ridiculous correction factors, you know, it's always, I think most engine builders will know that it's difficult when you kind of start doing a summer versus winter pull comparison. But no, things are going good there. As you mentioned, I did get the Airmotive mechanical fuel pumps. So the car is at Team Z. I hope to get back tomorrow evening or Friday morning with the new fuel cell in it, set up for the mechanical fuel pump. So yeah, lots of good stuff. And then of course, you know, with the motor we got on dyno right now that will end up in a Cyclone. We're using that to do quite a bit of development. We're going to talk about that a little bit later today. Where, you know, a big piece of what we want to do at Willis Performance is share information. Right, and you know, no secrets. When we have bad news, we want to share bad news. When we have good news, we would like to share good news. Of course, it's always more fun to tell a happy story than a sad story.
But we tell the whole story here.
We want to tell the whole story,
right? That way you guys can learn along with us. And there's been a lot more good than bad, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So we'll get into it. But one of the things we're going to run is we're going to run 4 different intake manifolds. Mm-hmm. And 4 currently planned 4 camshafts, but I think I'm going to add a 5th camshaft to that. Calais is doing a lot of wonderful things for us. You know, they just jumped on board so early with the Godzilla, with camshafts, connecting rods, and now they got main bearing caps. They're going to have crankshafts coming. They are going to have head studs coming. We can talk about that. Which is really great because I was offering those increased clamp load fastener head bolts.
And we had a question about that today on Facebook, so we'll be talking about head studs.
Yep. So lots of cool stuff going on. Behind us, you know, we got a lot of product put up there because one of the things for people that, you know, don't stay close and look and say, oh, geez, there's no aftermarket support. Well, there's a ton of aftermarket support.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, we're only a little over 2 years since it came out in a pickup truck. And we think back to probably the most significant competitor engine that came out recently, the LS, and that took about 4 to 5 years to start to get an aftermarket following, and you know, look what it's blown up to. So lots of cool stuff going on, and kind of anxious to get into it, and really anxious to make sure we get to all the questions people ask because you know, that's while they're dialing in, they have questions, they want some answers, and hopefully we can help them with that.
Without a doubt. We were talking at dinner tonight. Brian's son and wife made us a fantastic filet dinner. I mean, just out of this world. Got to thank you guys for that hospitality. These guys are so good to us every time we come up here. So our bellies are full and we're ready to ramble. we were just talking about how 2 years ago came up here and the highlight was looking at a bone stock Godzilla sitting in a Fox body frame, and people went nuts over it. And now we're at the point where we're dynoing, 7, 8, 900 horsepower NA engines and 1700 horsepower supercharged engines, and it's just going to keep going from there. We got to, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit just because I'm so excited. We got to hear the Innovate intake and hear how that sounded on the dyno today, and it is glorious. I cannot wait to bring you guys that video. That's going to be a home run. But Brian, we got a good crowd already. We got 76 people watching, and we're just getting going here. We're just heating up. We got a live audience here in our studios in Burbank, California, the dating game. Just kidding, we're in Willis, Michigan. It's not quite Burbank, California.
Yeah,
but,
a place I'd much rather be is Willis, Michigan, by the way.
Me too. We got way cooler stuff here. I mean, look at all that great Godzilla stuff. So if you missed the opening part of this, once again, we got a Comp Cams gift certificate to give away. We got a brand new system tonight, so we'll be able to hopefully do picture-in-picture. We're hoping the video quality is a little bit better because we have an actual webcam now and a new microphone. So hopefully we sound a little bit better. So why don't we get started? I know that you want to talk about tech because that's one of the main reasons we're on here. Let me just see if there's any other housekeeping I got to talk about.
Yeah, or any early questions that we should address before we get started with more stuff to ask questions about.
Oh, so we do have a few questions on here. So somebody asked Top Fuel. Not quite Top Fuel, but maybe, Street Outlaw or something like that. But, Brian, we do have some questions. Abe, what are you talking? What's some of the hot questions?
Yep.
Okay, Abe is a little behind on his audio. He's listening to it. So, you don't have it on your screen? I do?
Yep.
All right, I'll check out some questions. Let's see what we got. They can hear us. We got Ray Tubbs from Atlanta saying hello. We got my friend Jill McKenna, who is selling new Fords out of Indianapolis. So if you are looking for a new Ford, go over to Skillman Ford and ask for Jill. She'll get you hooked up. We got Castleberry on here, good old Andrew, and the folks from Innovate Race Engines who supplied the induction system for our Godzilla engine. We'll be showing you that stuff in a little bit.
Okay.
Will there be a blower intake manifold for a 1471 blower? How about that question?
Yeah, nothing that I'm aware of in the works right now. For a blower bolt-on intake for it. Yeah, that I'm sure someone could do like in a billet piece, but nothing cast coming out that I'm aware of. I do see a question. I went over to put some questions up too. So, what is the most unique vehicle with a Godzilla? Someone asked. I think the most unique one is a 1959 Impala Ranchero that's going to have an all-wheel drive Godzilla in it.
Yeah, that's going to be tough to beat.
That's going to be pretty. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I mean, there's lots of other tools. I mean, there's lots of cool stuff. Cyclones, Talladegas, 69 Mustangs, F1. Let's see, 1940 F Series. Dave Henderlong's Thunderbird which is really badass. So lots out there. But I think when you see a 59 Ranchero with not Ranchero but El Camino all-wheel drive with a Godzilla,
that's gonna be funky.
It's gonna be hard to beat for sure.
All right,
I also know of an S10 that's gonna have one in it, which is also.
It's about time somebody put something other than an LS in one of those. All right, I got a question for you, Brian. What is the largest intake valve you can put in a 7.3 head?
The largest we have done, and I don't think I'd want to go much larger, is a 2.25, 2.250.
Right,
which
would support how much horsepower?
Well, it all depends, right? Because you got to remember that's in a stock head. If you put that 2.25 intake in a aftermarket head with a really high port, design for that, it's going to support a lot more flow. But I think with the stage 3 heads that Dave Visner has done, that we use co-market with him, 1,700-1,800 horsepower, maybe more. I mean, that's what we've done. I'm sure other people will do better. That's kind of the fun part about this. A big piece of what we want to do is kickstart the aftermarket. So if I put a 7.3 in a 98 Mark, we don't do any vehicle work.
Right.
So I can't help you out there, unfortunately.
All right. Can I Be Frank, who has watched all of our videos, I believe, so far and commented on a lot, has a question. So we'll go to that one next. Details on the 900 horsepower Godzilla, probably what I just mentioned as far as NA.
Well, we have not done a 900 horsepower NA yet, because the highest horsepower engine we've done was we ran our Supercharged engine, so it didn't have the compression, didn't have the right cam timing for an all-out NA effort. That made 800.
Okay.
So I'm pretty confident if we wanted to do a 900, we could with those heads. So can you do more than that? I mean, I'm sure like you get a guy like, Tony Bischoff, that's just, or an Anthony DeSoma, a Chris Holbrook, these, guys that have been doing, these, NA engines,
Right.
Ben from EFI University, these, all out near pro stock style, small block type engines for years. I'm sure they'll do, exceed that. They may want to make for aftermarket heads and other stuff to make it even better. But
Gotcha.
there's a lot of people yet that have to dip into this engine and show, what the capabilities that they can get out of it.
But we're gonna in short term, and when I say that, I mean probably within the next few weeks, show you a pump gas combination NA that's gonna surprise a lot of people as far as the horsepower, the torque, and the fact that you don't have to rev it to 8 or 9 grand, and it's gonna make fantastic power. I don't know if Brian's ready to give away any numbers yet. I'll leave that up to him, but I think that combination is going to make a lot of people very happy.
Yeah, I think the combination. Again, I don't think we want to talk numbers as of yet, because we're just starting. But this is I intended to be a really nice street motor. So it's a 11-to-1 compression. We got the K1 rods in it, diamond pistons, Calais camshaft, and that's the engine we're going to do all this development work on. So what I'd like to do is kind of get through all that. We'll talk about that development program, take people through what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Right.
And then as that data starts to unroll, start to release, hey, what are the combinations? Because when we talk about, pull those slides up and start talking about what we're doing, there's kind of a reason for it. And it's not just, hey, what's the very super best combination, but what's the combination that might be best for that individual,
Right.
what their goals are.
And then also to provide the power and reliability so that you get an engine that will last a long time, make reasonable power for, like you said, what you're trying to do, whether it's a street rod, do you want more of the look? That might determine what intake you put on it, or is it for, a heavier, maybe a 71 Montego wagon, 4,000 pounder. But all right, let's move on. We got some other questions.
A couple other
here.
quick. What's the maximum bore? Again, that's all kind of engine builder specific, depending on how far they want to push it. The most I've gone is 4.24 inches, so just 20 over the stock.
Gotcha. So let's see here. John Lopez, is Ford going to produce a controls pack for the 7.3 with a 6R or 10R trans?
Don't know. All I know is, again, got to remember, being retired, pushing 4.5, 5 years, you're not kind of in the know anymore, right? But I did see that they were, just with everybody else that's seen on the internet, that they do plan on doing a control pack with a 6R one or the 10R 140 though, and the only constraint with that is that 10R 140 is a big transmission, so it's going to do great for the guys that want to put it like in an old F-Series, an old Super Duty, or maybe an older, 1940 pickup. But that that's 10R 140, to put that in a car, I don't think that's real feasible.
Right. How about this supercharger question from Steve Gurley?
I'm thinking about supercharger. Let's see, it's a question, it's unloaded, how about, I don't know. Most of the supercharger kits, when you have them, they are, I don't think they hurt the unloaded fuel economy bad. It's just, but what you will have to remember is kind of like when people get an EcoBoost, right? So it gets great fuel economy, but I put a big trailer behind it, and I get like bad fuel economy. Well, yeah, because you're using a lot of horsepower and torque to move it, and where does the horsepower and torque come from? The BTUs and the fuel.
Right.
So just be mindful is if you put a supercharger on it, you're going to be pulling a 40 fifth wheel. Be very cautious with the kit. Don't get a tuner kit. Get one that either ProCharge or Whipple, who are the two that have certified kits that have the carb EO on them. And I think both of those kits will offer a warranty with it, because you're going to be loading that thing hard and heavy for long periods of time, where a lot of the guys that put a supercharger on it, they'll hardly ever put a 40-foot trailer on it and try to take it on a trip. So that would be the only caution I would say.
And with a supercharger for towing, the throttle demand is going to be at lower RPM to get going, and that part throttle cruise. So if you start really putting timing to it and have, like he said, a tuner kit where you're tuning it without the trailer for max power, you're probably going to run it to detonation at lower RPM, because you're going to have a lot of cylinder fill, and you got to make sure you have the fuel and take the timing away, or else you're going to have a kablamo situation.
Yeah. So my advice is leave it with the guys that have really put a lot of engineering into it, and don't hurt it. And that goes with this engine, or any of the, whether it's a Hemi, an LS, or an LT, and you're going to use it in towing. Just be cautious with what you do.
Yep. We got some good questions on here. Bus Slayer has a question about 7.3 versus the older 6.2.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably answer that.
Okay, I gotta find it. Okay.
Right there.
Why did Ford decide to do 7.3 instead of further developing 6.2? I recall from the 6.2 came out, it's supposed to keep with 7 liters. I remember Roush programming to do so. Yeah, this is a great question. And I'm the guy that you can blame for that not happening. Okay, so I'll be very specific. So when I came back from Europe, and I was fortunate enough to be appointed to the position of Director of Global Engine Engineering, Ford needed to replace the 6.8 liter V10 for the dynamometer certs for CO2 reasons. And the plan and the approved program at that time was a 6.9 liter variant of the 6.2. The 6.2, I'll have to be quite frank, one nostalgia part of me liked it because it looked like the 427 single overhead cam, which is really, really super cool. It is a humongous engine. And when I looked at the fuel economy, I looked at the performance versus the smaller competitors, there's only two out there, one from GM and one from Ram. I said, is doing this 6.9 liter really the best way to invest in an all-new plant and put this into the car? I said, I'm really not convinced.
Right.
And the team, and that was going to be 6.9 liter. To get the fuel economy, the team wanted wanted to do a 7.3 variant of the 6.2,
right,
but they couldn't because they had to grow the deck height to get the 7.3 liters, and it wouldn't have fit in a Super Duty. Okay, so that's how big that engine was. So I asked them to do a study and tell me if that was really the best way to go forward. So when the team came back from further looking at other options, the 7.3 cam and block engine is what came out. And I think the guys did a really remarkable job on it. From the valve train, the bore stroke, it does share a common bore space with the 6.2. But again, I'm not a big 6.2 fan. The 2 spark plugs per cylinder. I mean, this 7.3 at wide open throttle only wants 23 degrees of spark with only 1 spark plug.
Right.
It's the engineers that did the work on that engine, I think, did a fantastic job. So that's why I didn't like it. I didn't want to do it.
Right.
And we sold a different program and saved tens of millions of dollars in investment and hundreds of dollars in variable cost.
All right. We have a question from Greg Engelman about lifter reliability.
Yeah, that's a great question. Ford did make a running change on the lifters, so I'm hoping there are no more field failures. And the way to look at that is, especially when they're lower mileage failures, under 60, 70,000 miles, a lot of times when you dig into and I don't know this, right? Because again, I retired before these field failures came out, so I'm speculating. I got to be very careful about letting you know that. And so when you see them at those lower miles, a lot of times what it ends up being is a supplier quality issue, whether it be heat treat, whether it be material properties. But I do know they did make a running change to the injector and bump the part number, because I was buying parts from the dealer, basically from when they first came out to current, and they did bump the part number on the lifters. I think the lifters are fine, especially when you do stuff like the cam that we do with Calais, what we call the 002 cam. I think that's fine. I think when you get into a boosted application with a lot more spring pressure, a lot more pressure on the valves as it's opening, or a very aggressive hydraulic roller, we're pushing all those to the Johnson low travel lifters, which is a super high quality lifter that has enormous field durability proven in the LS platform, because you sell a boatload of those for LSs.
Right.
And so that's what we are starting to push all of our customers to when they start to go to the more aggressive stuff.
I have a question for you. I'm going to throw you a curveball a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
7.3. So if somebody was contemplating building a car and they didn't have any parts,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever that car might be, a cool street car, a little bit of a drag car, street strip car, 7.3, big inch Windsor, or 460?
Hard choice, right? I mean, again, budget's gonna be a part of it, because the one thing you got to remember is when you're building a 7.3, you can go to the yards and you can find them pretty reasonably priced.
Right.
But you might be starting with a $4,500 to $5,500, core versus versus a Windsor. But to be open, the Windsor, you gotta, if you want to make, 450 to 500 horsepower, you just take the stock 7.3 and you throw it in and you're done, right? Don't change your cam. So let's say if you say I want to make 900 horsepower, okay? Well, now the Windsor is going to be pretty pricey too, because you won't have a stock block, you won't have a stock crank, you won't have stock rods, you won't have stock heads, you won't have stock kind of anything on it.
Right.
So that would get pretty pricey, but it can do it. The reason I would opt for the Godzilla over that personally is the bottom end of the block structure, right? So this engine picked up the same bottom end that we put on every V8 since 1991. It's a deep skirt block, cross-bolted mains,
Right.
and Ford has done that since 1991. Now, if you say, what about versus a 460? Well, the 460 architecture, I think you can build those pretty reasonably. And so depending on the power, that would be a harder. In fact, I've had people call me about doing a 7.3 that had a 385 base series engine.
Right.
And I said, well, are you sure you want to do that? Because, Trick Flow does offer some pretty reasonably priced cylinder heads. The blocks are cores. You can have a machine for a 4-bolt cap. And if you want to make that 750 to 850 horsepower, I think it's a pretty straightforward formula on those. So again, kind of depends on what the guy's looking for.
I got you. That's why I asked the question. It's cool to have options, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So let's see what we got here. Got a lot of people trying to do anything with Steve Morse Engines of Michigan. That would be more of a Brian question.
What's the question?
Do you do anything with Steve Morris? I personally don't, just because it's very high-end drag race stuff. Mm-hmm. All billet, and I don't really race anything. We've covered Steve in some things, and he's a great guy, but I have not actually worked with him.
Yep, no, I have not. Again, built some great stuff. I mean, there's a lot of extremely talented engine builders, but I haven't worked with Steve.
We have a question from Ross Panzica about the 417 oil pan.
Mm-hmm.
Scroll up a little bit, I think.
Up a little earlier.
Yeah. Somewhere up there. Who knows? Maybe down. I could just ask you. 417 oil pan running with a remote oil filter. What happens with oil pressure, sensors, and so on?
So yeah, the issue with the 417 pan or any of the aftermarket control systems other than OBR, which controls the oil pump pressure, you end up with a lot of pressure because the pump defaults to max flow. So it does have a bypass in there to protect the oil filter, but you'll be running over 100 pounds oil pressure with those, quite often. So that's the only kind of downside to that. So I tell people don't put thick oil in,
Right.
Yeah, we have one on our shop street car, a 417 pan with a remote filter. One of my to-do things, because I have turned a lot of engine builds away this year, is I think there's a way that I can provide to people what you can do to modify that pump so the max flow rate is reduced. So maybe instead of running 120, 100 pounds of pressure, you're running more like 70, but you still have adequate oil pressure at idle.
Right.
So we want to do that, but I'm going to need probably a couple weeks on the dyno just to try a couple different things out.
So two things real quick on the topic of oil pressure. If you do the cam lockout, can you get away with much less oil pressure since you don't have the oil pressure operating the VCT?
Well, you can get by with less oil flow. Oil pressure, really, the biggest factor in oil pressure is being able to feed the bearings, right? Cam, main rod bearings. So you need the oil pressure for that. You can get by with a lot less flow.
Okay.
So.
And then the next question from Joe McKenna. Most important question, where's Abe?
Abe is running the show.
Abe is
head producer.
He's that way.
Executive
He's off camera.
producer.
He'll pop in maybe in a little bit, but right now he is in the zone, and we do not want to disrupt Abe in the zone.
Yep. And
They don't disrupt me.
And I have a question. Has Chris Holberg started messing with 7.3? I'm not certain. I kind of think so, but I don't know for sure. To be open, I've talked about it. I said you really should start playing with this thing, Chris. But he hasn't shared anything that if he is doing anything specifically with me.
Cool. We got a couple shout outs here. Let's go back a little bit. Cheryl loves our choice of beverage, I believe.
Yeah.
Nice presentation. We appreciate that. We got Runa chiming in from New York. Alyssa in the zone. Not now, Chief. I'm in the zone. She says, yo, Schmitty. What's up, Alyssa? Thanks for chiming in. We got a lot of our friends out there. We got Spoolin 272. We got all kinds of people kicking in. Let's talk tech, though, Brian. You got some notes. Let's hold off on the questions.
Yeah, there are so many good questions. I hate to not answer the rest of them, but yeah, can we? Yeah, because this is going to bring up a whole lot of other questions too. So let's start with, if we could, Abe, could we pull up the slides on the development program that we're going to be encountering here?
Yep. So check this out. This is probably our newest feature. This is going to get exciting if it works. Cross my fingers. Abe is the man on this, and he's going to show us that we can do some high-tech stuff.
Okay, so Abe is getting it ready. We're in a little delay, so we can't see the screen.
But we'll get there.
Yeah. We could, while we're waiting for that screen to come up. Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
All right. So, yeah, you've seen this up here. So, first, what I always like to do, again, it's the engineer background in me, I like to talk about the testing we're doing, the dynamometer we're using, and the conditions. So on this specific set of development we're going to do, we're going to be using our Superflow water brake. The data is going to be corrected to SAE J607 as opposed to J1349. The reason we do that, pretty much every engine builder does correct to J607, so that's the industry standard for aftermarket engine buildings, where J1349 is the standard for all OEMs. There is about a 4.5% difference in power, J607 being higher when you use those correction factors. We will be using an electric water pump. We have dynamometer headers that were built for us by Team Z Motorsport. We also will have no air inlet restrictions, but on the same hand, we're not putting any bell mounts on the throttle bodies either. We are running pump gas from the Love's truck stop. It's 93 octane. And we also will be doing camshaft timing sweeps to identify the optimum timing using the stock VCT and the OBR control system. So when we get through that, the plan is to show what kind of a fixed cam timing would be element to it. So we're going to have a lot of work to do. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, I guess the next slide is coming up, but I gotta wait till I see it before
We're on a little delay, which is one of the things we're trying to figure out, but it's still cool. We have refreshments.
Yep. We can talk about. Yep. All right. All right. So this. Do you have the next one, Abe? This is the same one. No more beer for Abe. Abe is. And what you can do is you can just go to the next one and the next one without going back to us.
Yeah, the next one is the engine configuration.
Okay. Yep.
Let's
Should
check
be
it out.
popping up shortly.
And don't forget, we got a trivia question coming up, and we'll give away a $100 gift certificate to Cams.
Okay, absolutely. So here's what we're running. We're running a stock block, stock crank, stock oil pump, and pan. The Willis Performance Visitor Engine Development Stage 1 CNC valves. These have this heads, I'm sorry. They have the stock valves in them. Of course, Calais pack springs. We have the Johnson low travel lifters, Manton push rods, and they are select fit so that we meet the preload spec. And typically you have to run, anywhere between 3 and 5 different push rod lengths to get that preload. We're within that spec range. All cams are manufactured by Calais with their engineered profiles. It has 11-to-1 compression with diamond pistons, K1 rods, Mala bearings, and we have the WPE billet fuel rails with 80-pound injectors in it. Okay, I think the next one we're going to talk cams.
Yep.
As soon as it. Sorry about the delay. I know it's a. I can't even tell Evan to dance because you won't see it.
Yeah,
so,
that would be terrible.
Yeah. So we're going to run 4 camshafts. Each will be run with 4 different intake manifolds for a total of 16 configurations. I did talk to my good friends at Calais today, and we're going to add one more cam to this as well. So the first cam is the one that we use in a lot of our applications. This is the one had the 600 horsepower, 600 foot-pound of torque camshaft when combined with both cylinder heads. It's on 111 degree lobe separation angle, and it's a pretty small cam. It's 220, 226, but the stock cam is only a 200 degree duration cam. The next one we're going to put on is a 230 degree duration on the intake, 242 on the exhaust with 111 lobe separation. Then we bump up to 240 and 250 with 100 degree lobe separation with even a little bit more lift. And this cam is probably better with the stage 2 heads when we start to go bigger valves, when we start to get that big a lift. And then the last cam is 112 degree lobe separation angle with 254, 264 duration. And now the stock cam I should have put in here, that's 200 degree duration intake exhaust, and it's, I believe, 600 lift on the exhaust and 590 on the intake. So now as we go to the intake manifolds we'll be running, so we're going to run the stock intake manifold and stock throttle body, and there's a photo of it. Next, we will be running the Indy Power Products manifold, and this is a really cool manifold. As hopefully you'll be able to see here shortly, that looks a lot like a conventional hot rod engine, right? It's a 4-barrel carb-looking intake. Of course, we're going to run it with fuel injection, and it's a dual plane. But because the runners are pretty short, it still likes a pretty high power peak.
Yeah, but one cool thing about that engine, if you really want to run a conventional style, old school air cleaner, it's probably the only manifold that will allow you to do that.
And I do know somebody that has contacted me that has made a distributor work. So they went through a bunch of effort to make a distributor work, and they're going to share that once they get, once these kind of feel it's more commercial.
Nice.
Next, looking forward to running this. This is the BTR intake. This is the intake that we run on my personal drag car, and this intake is super short and designed for high RPM with the short runners common manifold, and will work extremely well with boost and package. So we're actually with the ProCharger, crate-driven ProCharger on my car, and this intake we're able to make it fit under a stock hood.
And that's also the manifold you're running on your race car.
Yes, yes, sir. And then the next one is the one Evan talked about earlier. This is the Innovate, and it's individual stacks to atmosphere, individual throttle bodies, and they offer this in this length, which is the longest length, which is a length from the head flange to the end of the trumpet of 9 inches. They also have one that is at 7 3/8, and also the shortest set of stacks is at 5 3/4. So we're going to be running all this stuff. And then on the cams, I mentioned we're going to run one more. We're going to take one of those the 230-degree duration cam, and we're going to narrow that lobe centers up to about 108 and run that as well. So that's going to make 5. And if I really get crazy and want to throw the stock cam in at the end just for fun, we might do that, but it's probably not relevant. So lots of cool stuff going on. I do want to talk just a little bit about intakes though. And the reason we're running all these combinations is, obviously people like to see data and like to understand what it will do. But when you pick an intake, there are a huge number of factors that determine what's the right intake. So, for example, you kind of want it to fit in your car. Right?
That's pretty important.
That's pretty important.
And that's something that we're going to battle with because we want to maintain a flat stock hood in our Cyclone.
Absolutely. And then, there is weight of the manifold. Some weight considerably more than another. And then there's also power is going to be the most important thing to me. So I really need to make sure the cam I pick matches the intake I pick so I get the best combination. Because if you say, what's the best cam? Well, the best cam with the stock intake isn't going to be the best cam with something like the BTR intake. Now there's one other intake that we won't be running because we don't have one here in stock, but it's the Danbury Competition Engines intake that we've used, and that's a sheet metal intake, which has got a really low profile and a little bit longer runner. So that intake works very, very well too, but that won't be part of our comparison when we do this development work here.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but so in picking power band, it really boils down to like the old school stuff with the 5 liters, short versus long runner, or dialing in the runner length for the power band that you want.
Yeah, as long as the intake is designed well, right? I mean, you can kind of screw that up if you do a bad job. Right. Everything we've talked about here, I think all these intakes are designed very well, and as long as you put enough throttle body in front of it, so you don't have a big restriction, you're gonna be fine.
But in our testing, we've seen swings of so far 50 horsepower, literally just swapping the manifold and not changing anything, and that doesn't mean that one is better or worse, because one might be better at torque or in the RPM band or with a cam that you're going to use, and then the other one might be better for another cam. So I don't like, even in my magazine writing days, people would say, what's the best intake? Well, there is no best intake. It depends on what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. It's all about putting a package together, right? And that's why we think running this experiment or development exercise and sharing the results openly with everybody, we think is going to kind of just help people with their judgment. And the engine that you mentioned is, the surprising thing on that was we ran a stock intake versus one of the others, and like I said, it was 50 horsepower and it didn't lose any torque, but that's because it had such a long duration cam, it killed the torque even in the stock intake. So which normally isn't the case because you wouldn't put that combination together. But we did it just because there's so many, I like to call them, people that like to offer input on the internet that really have never done anything, but they just read it here or read it there and kind of regurgitating what they said. And when I worked at Ford, I worked for a guy named Jim Clark, and he kind of had a name. He said, well, you have information providers and information brokers. right? And the information providers are the guys that you want to be close with because they know what they're doing. Where the brokers are just kind of regurgitating what they heard and may not understand why. So we kind of want to put it all out there so people have that to use.
Cool. Real quick, we got some new viewers. I got to throw a shout out to B-Rad, my buddy Brad. We got DJ Henderlong's on there, Big Guy 45, Brad Grissom, Paul Gunther. We got a lot of people. Larry Parker said enough about the 7.3. Let's talk about Project Stalker. That's a topic for another day, but I will say that Chris Holbrook does have my motor, and that project will happen as soon as we get done with the Cyclone. It's resting peacefully. John Chenard knows. And then, so what about the CWI performance intake, Brian?
CWI. Oh, that's Creative Works. Yes. The guys that did the Foxzilla car. Bob's a super good guy, big Ford guy, and doing a lot of really cool stuff. I have not run that yet. I do have a customer that is using that with their Pro Charger, going into a 1969 Fairlane Cobra formal roof car.
Nice.
And the chassis fab work is done, so as soon as I get that back, as soon as I get all the parts back, I can get his engine assembled and we'll have that on the dyno. So that's a very, very cool project and super good for a boosted engine because it has a air-to-water intercooler built into it. So specifically engineered, yep.
And Crystal White LX50 asks, is there anything going on with the intake manifold that Paul Svinicki showed off last year? I'll handle that one. Mm-hmm. We did see Paul a few months ago when Abe and I were up here, and he didn't seem like there was a whole lot of movement with the moving forward with that, but we will see Paul this weekend, so I will get a report on that and be able to answer as Brian tips off his drink with his beautiful Willis Performance Engines tumbler. Look at that. That is stylish.
Yep, my friend Jake Heffron had those made.
Yep. No, great. They're not available for... and then two grade 4 guys right there. Carlos Sabrino. Big shout out to Carlos. Had a tough accident a couple of months ago, and then some other bad news. We are so glad that you're with us tonight, Carlos. Always thinking about you and hoping that you're getting better every day, and can't wait till you get back on track. But glad that you're chiming in tonight, and we think about you all the time.
Yep, absolutely. Is the Godzilla a modern Cleveland engine? I'd say no. When I look at the Godzilla, it's a, like I said, the bottom end, Ford has done a good job at kind of holding to this lower end structure on the V8s, right?
Yep.
So as I mentioned, everything from 1991 forward, all deep skirt blocks, all cross bolted, some 4, some 6, depending on the application, but very consistent. And the other thing that's really super cool is from 1992 on, the same rear face of block, same crank offset, and then I forget what year they went from a 6-bolt to an 8-bolt pattern on the flywheel, but that's also the same. So when people are saying, well, what do I do for a flywheel or a bell housing? Hey, a Coyote works on a Coyote, works on a 464 valve, works on the Godzilla. So that part is really cool. It's a dry valley, and that's been consistent since '91. And it also has that flat flange on the cylinder head to intake manifold interaction, and then again inline valves on it, which the Cleveland were canted. And all those decisions were made by, not by myself. They were by the engineers that were given the task to meet the engine's objectives. And I think, like I said, my credit goes out to those engineers that did that work and did it on a pretty tight timeline with pretty intense stress to get it done quickly.
But a lot of it makes for great hot rodding stuff, because literally we changed intake manifolds on the dyno in a matter of minutes. You have things like a 60 millimeter roller camshaft. Like if you just rattled off some of the attributes of the Godzilla, mm-hmm. like 217 intake valve, 60 millimeter cam,
yep.
What you mentioned about the short block, favorable bore and stroke, a lot of displacement, you would immediately think race engine. So it's got the DNA.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, tell people whatever, the things that made it a great truck engine, also make it, prime for the aftermarket.
Right.
And there will be tons of these in the yards, just like there's tons of LSs and Hemis out there, because there's a lot of Super Duties. It's going in motorhome chassis. It's going in cutaway vehicles. So
Sure.
it's a high volume application for sure.
And not everybody. Just so you guys know, first of all, I got a little shameless plug here. Please hang in there. We're going to give away a CompCams gift certificate. CompCams has been a supporter of the channel. But if you go back and watch the Dave Henderlong T-Bird video, you will see how you can go 10s very easily with an absolutely stock engine. So just even if you don't want to hot rod the thing, even if you can't afford a cam imported heads, if you put this thing in a 3 or a 3,200 pound car and you hook it up, you're going to have a 10-second car that you could literally make thousands of runs on. Shifting the thing at 6,000 RPM, not taxing the engine, and then it's just a matter of turning that wick up if you want to go 9s or low 10s and still have yourself an amazing amount of reliability.
Yep. And then we have a question from Mr. Henderlong touching on the differences between the takeout engines. There's a lot of takeout engines because Amazon has bought Ford chassis and they're converting them to pure electric vehicles, and these takeout engines are becoming available. Those
Right.
were all Dyno Cert engines. The Dyno Cert engines ran in a lower RPM range than the chassis cert. So when you think of a Dyno Cert, think of anything that leaves the factory incomplete. So if it's a pickup truck and there's no bed on it, that's an incomplete vehicle, that's a Dyno Cert. If it leaves the factory complete, like an F250, 350, or 450, then that's a chassis cert. And there's differences. Now the rated power is different, mainly because of the regulations being different. The engine itself, like I tell people, the bones of the engine, the block, the crank, the cylinder head, the camshaft, rocker arms, push rods, lifters, front cover, oil pan, oil pump, all that stuff's the same. There are some slight differences, such as the damper is a lighter damper because it doesn't have to rev as high. It's a lower RPM engine.
Right.
So a few little things like that, but overall it's a very similar engine. And as far as buying those to modify, they're a pretty good choice.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Why don't we jump on some of these questions? We got the world famous Wayne Joffrey. I think he's in your realm, right? He's retired.
He is, yep.
So he's checking in. And then, let's see, look forward to meeting you guys at PRI. What are some areas of concern with the motor as far as street strip application? Is there anything I need to keep my eye on as I creep up on power? And that's LaRon Rich.
Yeah, so to keep, the things that are, I always say the Achilles heels. One, I don't like the saw cut between the bores, although we're working around that.
Right.
So, although I still, even on the drag car, which we made, good horsepower with, I still ran the stock head gaskets on that. Although, you can see behind me a set of copper head gaskets that we're working with Team Z Motorsports on. So this next engine we're putting in will be a fire ring in it, which will be
Right.
in the head with a receiver groove in the block and a copper head gasket. And what we did with the saw cut is we actually just we shaped a piece of aluminum, tacked it in there, and then decked the block. When I started to think about it, even though it's got that saw cut there, it also is pretty narrow and it's a very small section. So for that to actually bend and cause an issue with the head gaskets, it might not be as bad as it looks. Although I'd prefer it not to be there at all.
Right.
But that's the way we're getting around that. So that's one thing. And of course, the other thing is with the oil pan or oil pumping below the bottom of the block, packaging becomes an issue, and that's why companies like 417 Motorsports, Indy Power Products have come up with a pan that does provide adequate clearance. But again, it's not a stock pan. Although Mr. Henderlong in his 10-second Thunderbird, was able to put the motor in kind of high enough to use the stock pan in his combination.
Gotcha. I think we have a question about supercharging, which is a little bit vague. Tim Teague, ProCharge, Supercharge, which ProCharger is a supercharger, or turbo, which one would you recommend?
Say it one more time. I'm sorry.
I'll answer this one. ProCharge, which is a supercharger, a centrifugal. Supercharger, which is the same thing, but maybe he means a Roots.
Probably means Roots, yeah.
Or
Like
or turbocharge. I think it absolutely just depends on, if you're going class racing, you want to pick the best power adder for the class. If you're building a street strip car, then you could make 1,000 horsepower with really any boosted application. It's just a matter of what look you want, the complexity of adding maybe turbos with more piping versus a Whipple or a Vortec or a ProCharger. That's you can get the F250 ProCharger bolt-on kit. It really just really matters about the packaging and then who's going to tune it. If your local tuner and you can't tune it yourself is used to one type of power adder, then that may be a better way to go. So you have to kind of look big picture. But I think if you're stuffing boost in the motor doesn't really know where that boost is coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I think you answered. Yeah, I would have said the same thing. It's kind of a lot of personal preference. We've got a couple customers we're doing turbo motors for. We've got our twin turbo street car that the torque converter is supposed to be here late this week, early next week, so we'll be able to get that out. And like you said, they're all good. It's kind of like, what do you like the most?
Right.
Turbos are going to make a lot of power because you're driving with the energy out of the exhaust. But they're all good, and like you said, in the class rules, they end up equalizing things, right? So
right.
They're if you got a small ProCharger, you're going to weigh less than if you got a big ProCharger, or if you got a twin turbo, you're going to weigh a lot more than if you got a single turbo or a single centrifugal. So it depends on what you like and what you're comfortable with. I will say on the race car, the reason we went with supercharging is I was watching the shakedown on Flow Racing, before it was Flow Racing, and I was watching, it was a super hot day, kind of like today was, and I was watching the turbo cars timing out. And I was just
timing out while staging.
While staging, right? They couldn't get staged in 7 seconds. So I said, I think we're just going to go with the ProCharger. And Jason Lee seconded that. He said it's a lot easier to drive. It's just like driving a lot bigger motor, as opposed to having to worry about the spooling and everything else.
And if you've seen our videos on Brian's car, we did a track day video on his first track outing with the ProCharger. That engine with the zoomies and the supercharger sounds erotic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the cackle sounds like an alcohol funny car or something. It's wild. You got to go back and watch that video. We keep going back and forth on the numbers, how many people are watching. I think next time we get over 100, we're going to keeps going up and down, but we'll pop the question to give away the gift certificate. We don't want to keep people, we've been almost an hour already, so we don't want to keep people too long on having the chance to win the $100 gift certificate to Cams. Getting some spam on here. I keep having to delete, which is ridiculous, but I guess that means we're doing a good job. If the bots are finding the channel, pretty sad, but
yep. And so we can talk about a couple other things while you're kind of looking for questions and waiting about the count. Like one of the things we have behind us, you can kind of see parts of it, but one of the things that you hear from the people that aren't doing enough looking or just want to say it, hey, there's not enough parts for the engine, the aftermarket isn't supporting it. So behind us we've got, when we showed all those intakes, so you've got a high-end billet intake that Visner, and I forget the other company that makes them now, that's marking a billet intake. You got Brian Tooley Racing getting heavily involved now with the Godzilla. Not only are they making the intake, which should be available at the end of next month, but we also use them exclusively for our spring guides, retainers, and keepers that they made for us for our Stage 2 stuff. You got Indy Power Products with their intake. You've got Innovate. You've got Danbury Competition Engines. Lots of intakes available. Lots of camshafts available. Copper head gaskets. Johnson lifters. And again, I'm just really tickled with my friends at Calais who really jumped in early, as I keep mentioning. Starting with cams and rods, then going to the billet main cabs, and now as I can't offer the premium head bolts anymore, they picked the ball up there, and they're working to have head studs available. The initial offering will be a super premium material. They're going to be about $550 for a set because they're having a hard time getting the 8740 locally, the domestic.
Right.
So as soon as that frees up a bit, they'll offer those in the future, which will be a bit lower cost. So lots of good stuff.
And don't forget bottom end stuff too, as far as tons of oil pans out there. Jessel is making parts, belt drives, and it's exploding. Of course, you have rods, pistons, cranks. What do you think the next big jump will be? Will it come from an aftermarket cylinder head?
I think that's probably the thing that I think a lot of people are anxious for.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the bottom of the block is really, really strong. So I'm anxious to get an aftermarket cylinder head. I think there's some folks out there that I've talked to, which again I'll let them make any announcements, but are looking at offering castings. So
Right.
I would expect, again, it's not tomorrow. It's more like probably a year to year and a half from now.
So I will ask you, and then I'll ask you this one question, and then we will jump to the trivia question for the gift certificate. If you were building the cylinder head yourself, what would you improve?
Well, the thing is, the head's got an enormous amount of water in it, and they needed that for cooling with the Super Duty heavy load applications, right? So, the first thing I want to do is I want to thicken up the deck, and I'd want to thicken up the combustion chambers to make sure we don't get any fatigue issues, and I want to get rid of a lot of the water around the ports, and I'd probably want to put in a different port configuration.
Okay, that sounds pretty smart.
Yeah, I mean,
reliability and power.
Yeah, that's it, absolutely.
Now we got to come up with a question, Brian. We should have probably done this in advance.
Uh-oh.
Nancy's over there waving. She
Yeah.
wants to ask a question. Dave's got questions. We got some cool photos to show you, though. We could show you a couple of old school Pro 50 photos.
So why don't you just pop the first one up? Hopefully it doesn't have a name on it. Do they have names on them?
Nope.
Okay, so if you popped up the first car, and the first person that picks the driver of that car.
I actually got a good one.
Okay. Never mind.
Yeah, no, but we got a couple of obvious ones.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a red Mustang. Maybe go with that one.
What should
Not
you
his.
go with? Not mine.
All right, I'm gonna go pick the photo out.
Okay. You
Keep
better-
them entertained.
Okay, so
Already
why Evan
It
is
is?
picking it?
beautiful.
Okay.
This is a good one. See, Abe is on it, man. He doesn't need any coaching. This is why we got to have like sound guy, IT guy, production guy. Wait till you guys see this. So the first person to chime in on whose car it is gets the gift certificate. And then we will probably answer a couple more questions.
And then close it out.
Dan Grippo, C4. See, guys, it's the same as a Coyote. Same as a Coyote. Here we go. Something's about to happen. I hope. I don't know. Should have been on by now. Abe's working it.
I wonder if we lost it.
Oh, did we lose the feed?
It looks frozen.
Feed's still going.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Who's gonna be the first one to get that one? I thought you said red.
Well, we switched it up.
Okay.
All right, let's see who chimes in.
Yeah. Yep. There you go.
Yep.
It's
Crystal White LX50, got it.
Yep. But the first answer is correct, but we're looking for the driver. So how are they going to redeem that, Evan? Are they going to email you so you can get their shipping details?
Yes, unless you want to just type your email. How about Crystal White LX50 Greenback got it first? got the driver. So Crystal White, LX50. Type in your email if you don't mind. Or you can send me a message on my official Ford Guy Instagram. But if you type in your email, I'll shoot you an email and get your contact info so we know where to send this to. And actually, I'm just going to have my buddy at CompCams contact you or have you contact him. You won the $100. $100.
$100 certificate.
And it's not one of these. It's not one of these. You have to spend $100 to get $100. You just get a $100 gift certificate to CompCams or any of the brands that they have,
Good
which
deal.
is pretty cool. Glidden, that was, So we'll wait for a chime in here. A lot of people getting Greenback. It froze a few times. Yeah, it kind of stinks right at the critical point, but Crystal White's the winner. We might be a little behind, but that's okay.
Yep.
We're having some fun out here in Michigan. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, would appreciate if you click over in the bottom right, that little picture of me with the green Mustang, and hit that subscribe button. We're going to have a fun time this weekend. We'll be cruising up to the NMRA, NMCA Nationals in Martin, Michigan. So that's going to be a fun event.
So, Evan, could you type in your Instagram name? So, Crystal50, Crystal White. And just give it a minute. That way they can contact you there so they can get their
There we go.
prize.
I wonder if I can respond. Let's see here. Nope.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah, because we definitely want to give these away.
Great.
We don't
So
wanna go
yeah,
all
Crystal White 5 liter. Can you just respond that you have that so we know you got it? Because we don't want to cut it off before you get your chance to claim your prize.
Yep.
So, other than that, were there any other questions while we're waiting that we can answer?
Runa is correct. That picture was from the Grand National versus Mustang shootout at Englishtown. Still waiting for a sponsor. There you go. I'll see you tomorrow, Friday at NMRA. Yeah, all right. Well, definitely come up to me and we'll get you hooked up.
All
I'm
right.
pretty easy to find. I'll probably have 2 cameras hanging off me and Abel will be with me.
Yep.
As
Making you look good.
Yep. As our friends like to say, the tallest Asian in America, also known as the yellow M&M, because he sounds like the yellow M&M. His voice is deep. He should be the one on the show here because he's got the voice.
Audio is mint, but video is glitchy. Thanks for that.
Yep.
Good to know. It might just be the bandwidth we have out here in beautiful Willis.
Yeah, we're starting to get glitchy videos, so maybe we'll wrap it up for tonight.
Yep, sounds good. You're up since 3 a.m., so you're probably ready to relax.
Been a long day, and we'll catch you guys back. We got some dyno work to do tomorrow. We appreciate everybody checking out the REVan channel. As always, please subscribe. Have yourself a fun time. I'm going to actually let Brian close it out with his classic closeout line. But we do appreciate everybody. If you're coming out to the NMRA, NMCA this weekend,